Hello, it is me again, Becky. Thank you for stopping by. Today, I'm in a totally random room in my house because I looked cute today, so I didn't want to waste the opportunity to record a video when I looked cute. So I couldn't record in front of my shelves because there's something going on the street. They're working on my street right outside my window, which is right next to my bookshelves, and it's very loud. So I thought I would just pop into a random room in my house. So today's video is going to be me recommending you some books that you shouldn't judge based on the cover. All of these books I really enjoyed. Highly recommend them. The stories I feel like are really great stories. However, the covers leave a lot to be desired. And I'm not going to pretend like I don't judge books based on their covers, because I do. I am a cover whore. If I see a pretty cover, I tend to buy the book, even if I end up hating said book, you know? So it's not always the outside that matters. It's what's inside that counts, everybody. Let me get to sharing with you some books that I think you shouldn't judge these lackluster covers for. The first book is one that I'm sure everybody's tired of me recommending, and that is Unicorn Bait by S.A. Hunter. I mean, look at this cover. It's not exactly the most eye-appealing cover, okay? I want to say this cover was probably designed back in the early 2010s when authors were just picking random stock image elements and putting them together. That's my guess. I mean, I don't know. This could have been designed by somebody. I don't know any of the designers of these, quite frankly. This is a fantasy romance about a woman who pricks her finger on a unicorn horn, and it transports her to this fantasy world where she is forced into an arranged marriage by this man who doesn't take off this knight in shining armor helm because he thinks that she's the princess of this country. And she just goes along with it because, like, what else is she gonna do? She's like, I don't know where I'm at, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to go along with this. And in the process of going along with it, she ends up falling in love with her husband, but she still wants to get back to her human realm. So I absolutely love this. If you're tired of hearing me recommend this book, just read it already so I can stop recommending it. The sequel also doesn't have a very eye-catching cover, but the story is great. If you don't mind like a humorous, doesn't take itself too seriously fantasy romance. Another duology that I just don't think the cover conveys what the story is about is The Teeth in the Tide by Rebecca F. Kenny. I mean, if you look at this cover, it just looks like some tentacles with some light in it, and that's what it is. And that does have a little bit of an element of the story within it, but I just don't think this conveys that it is a fantasy romance about a merman who is seeking a better life for his son. In this, the merman Rake, he is searching for a way to get legs so that he can get his son to the island, and hopefully the humans will take him in and provide him with a better life so that he isn't sexually abused like Rake was. And that just doesn't come across in this story. So I think if this book could get a redesigned cover, it would grab people's attention much more. Next up is The Kingmaker by Kennedy Ryan, specifically these covers right here. I absolutely hate it when books get picked up by a traditional publisher and all they freaking do with it is throw a damn flower on the cover. Like, what is this supposed to convey to me? Other than, I know I found it in the romance section, but what is this supposed to tell me about the story? Nothing. I feel like if they wanted to put something on these covers, they should have put a compass on it. Because a compass is a charm that the main male character gives to the female main character, and it sort of has to do with their journey. But no, that would take a little bit too much thinking power and creativity. Instead, let's just slap a flower on the cover. I hate these. They're awful. But this is a contemporary romance about two people who come from very different backgrounds. Our female main character is indigenous and she is fighting for her native lands to not have pipelines built on them. And our male main character's father owns the oil company that is building the pipelines on her native land. So they meet when there is a protest rally that she is leading, and he is there visiting with his father, and he ends up saving her from being arrested. And their story spans decades, and it's their story of how they just fall in love with one another. But you wouldn't know that from this cover. Another cover that I find very ugly, quite frankly. I'm not the biggest fan of this cover. And that is Garden Spells by Sarah Addison Allen. It's not the worst thing, okay? But I just don't love this cover. I love the foiling on it. I don't know. There's something about this cover that just doesn't appeal to me. Now, it does have things that, you know, associate with the plot, like the apple tree. Very big plot point in the story. But something about this. But this is a general fiction story about a family who has some slight magical abilities to them. And it all stems from this apple tree. And one of these sisters comes back home after being gone for a really long time. She's escaping an abusive relationship. And she learns to embrace the abilities that she has and how these sisters reconnect. And I don't know if that conveys this very well. I don't know what could be done to make this better. And I do like the foiling, but it's just not the most eye-appealing thing to me. Next up is one of my favorite books. I did a dedicated review for this book. It's gotten 6 stars every time I read it, and that is 4 Years Trapped in My Mind Palace by Johann Twist. Now, this is a better version of the original cover, which looked like this. This one, not eye-catching at all. But what I like about this one is along the top of his head has different elements within the story. This one does not. This one just has like this very, very like unrecognizable castle with this like sunset landscape inside a silhouette. This doesn't really tell me what this story is about. Whereas if they had had the elements from this cover on this one, I feel like it would have been a little bit more telling. This is about a story about a young man who has been paralyzed for most of his life. He can't communicate, he can't speak, but he can hear. He can hear and he can see the things around him. He just can't convey that he understands. And he gets moved into this retirement home to be a roommate with this old man who has Alzheimer's. And this old man can actually hear his thoughts. So he becomes his voice for this young boy. And when this old man goes into what he calls his dementia dreams, where he's reliving his past lives, it sucks this young boy into his memories. So this young boy, Aaron, is sort of able to live this adventurous, memorable life that he hasn't been able to lead because he's been stuck in this vegetative state pretty much. This is such a great story. I wish more people would read it. It has a great platonic friendship. It's got great historical elements. The author really did some research into what he was talking about, and it just pulls at your heartstrings. But it just doesn't do it justice. Another book that you might pass up because the cover looks kind of cringy. I mean, I think it's kind of an iconic cover, but for somebody who's not exactly inclined to pick up alien romance, I don't think this cover would encourage them to do so. That's I Married a Lizard Man by Regina Abel. I mean, look at this cover. It's so bad. It's so bad, but come on now. Tell me that isn't the cheesiest cover, but it is just so golden. I tell you what, it really does convey what you're going to get within the story. You're going to get this woman with a lizard man. So this is one where the cover really does tell you what you're going to get. But I've heard many people say that this cover is awful, and this is why they don't want to pick up this series, is because of this cover. Now, it did get a recover where it's just the lizard man on the front. It's not as cringy, but I don't know. This cover is just, it's something else, let me tell you. This is, like I said, an alien romance about this woman, Susan, who goes to this prime mating agency, which is essentially like a matchmaking service, to pair her up with a different species who is looking for a mate. And she gets paired up with Lizard Man here. And it's their story. It's a very sweet alien romance, and the story is not that long. So I really think if you're looking to start alien romances, this would be a good place to go. Just don't let this cover sway you from the story within, okay? okay? Another series that I think just the covers aren't bad, okay? But I think the covers make it seem like the series is something that it's not. And that is these covers of the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey. These covers make it look like this is an erotic story, okay? It makes it look like there's lots of smut and sexiness in the story, and that's really not what these books are about. Yes, there is a romance in the background going on. Yes, there is a couple smut scenes within this series. But this is about a female serial killer who is taking her revenge on this town who horribly, maliciously abused and bullied her family. Like, tortured them, okay? And these covers just don't convey that. You would think based on these covers that you were just gonna get a romance with a lot of smut, and you're really not. You're really not. And I feel like if you're somebody who doesn't like romance and you saw these covers, you would never pick up this series because that is what these are pretty much conveying that you're going to get. But if you knew what this story was about, that it is a somewhat thriller, you would be more inclined to pick these up, which is why I like this cover better. I still don't love this cover, but it's much better than these ones. And lastly is a book that just broke my freaking heart again. This is a book that I wouldn't have ever picked up either based on this cover. The only reason I read it is because the author reached out to me and he wanted a review of this book back when I took author requests for reviews. And this book, the story is so much better than the cover could ever be. And that is The Fog Within by Nick Shamhart. Yeah, this cover isn't great, okay? This just isn't conveying that this is a story of a young woman who has autism, and we see her life through 3 stages of her life, and the beautiful, soul-warming, tear-jerking relationship that she has with her father. Would you get that from this? This is another story, again, that I need more people to read, because it will definitely just make you, it'll make you happy, but it'll also make you sad. There are some inanimate objects within this story that had me fucking sobbing. A spoon, y'all. A spoon within this story had me sobbing. This story is so good. I need more people to read this story, especially if you're wanting a story with autism rep. The author's daughter is nonverbal, and so he wrote this story sort of what he hoped his daughter's life could look like. And it's just a very moving story about a father's love for his daughter and everything he's willing to do to give her the best chance of living a great life that he could. I seriously need more people to read this. And I thought that was it, but there's one more book that came to mind that I should have picked from my bookshelf, but I forgot to. And that is one of my favorite dystopian stories, and that is Devastation by Shandy Elkirth. So this cover really doesn't convey what this story is about. And you probably looked at this cover and you probably wouldn't even know what it was. I mean, I think when I first looked at it, I had to guess what it was. It's shattered glass, right? The font is not the most eye-catching, but the story itself, I absolutely loved. This is a dystopian about the US who ends up in a war with Canada. Yeah. When I first read this book, I was just like, well, that's something different. And I absolutely loved it. It doesn't go too in depth about like what happened to cause this war, but it's really just following these group of kids through multiple POVs as they're trying to make it to Mexico where they can be safe from this impending war that's going on with Canada. And I absolutely loved the characters. I loved the action. The author doesn't really take much punches with the characters, you know? So you never know who's gonna die. But this cover really just doesn't convey that. Now, its sequel, Isolation, this cover conveys it a little bit more. You can tell that it's about the USA and the flag is in tatters. But this cover, no, doesn't really do it justice. So those are some books that I think you should give a shot, despite the fact that the covers aren't exactly the most eye-catching, the prettiest, or they just don't really match up with what the story is about. You should really give the stories a shot, because a lot of these books, if I hadn't read them, I never would have found some really great books that I've reread several times that I've absolutely loved and that have touched my soul. So once again, don't judge a book by its cover. It's what's on the inside that counts. So let me know down in the comments if I've convinced you to read any of these books, to add them to your TBR, or let me know a book that you've absolutely loved whose cover you don't exactly think is beautiful. If you don't want to comment that but would like to let me know you made it to the end of this video, could you leave me a mirror emoji? And with that, thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, go out there and pick a book up not based on its cover. I know it's gonna be hard, I know it is, but pick up a book that you wouldn't normally gravitate to. Maybe it has a really great story hidden behind those pages. Bye.